Welcome back to FM Jeeping. My name is Mark. Today we're going to be installing this Barnes full hydro mount on a Dana 60. So this is part one of a multi-video series on going full hydro on a Jeep XJ. This part is going to showcase putting a full hydro mount on a 1-ton axle. This is a Barnes full hydro mount going on a Dana 60 05 Plus with an Artec swap truss. So I just want to apologize for the choppiness of the video. This was filmed over about a month and a half's time. In that time, I got sick twice. Holidays happened, and then I ran short on ability to get into the garage and get this video done. But I wanted to showcase what it would take to get two different companies' products to work together, Barnes and Artec, basically. So with that being said, let's get into the video. I also went out, got a Barnes full hydro mount. Now this is an Artec truss that I have on the axle, so I'm going to try to kind of retrofit it. I believe there shouldn't be too much modification I need to do. I might need to trim a couple areas, but nothing super major. A lot of people I've seen that install the rams onto their axles tend to do it with the axle off the rig, and I'm going to do the same. Literally just pull the axle forward with the tires back on it and do it that way and kind of weld the ram mount, you know, off the rig, just because it'll be easier to get into those tight spots. I'm not wheeling anytime soon, so I'm not in a giant rush, and it'll be a little bit easier to film and do my modifications instead of having to crawl under the Jeep each time. Also, with the axle out, I can start planning some future mods where I'm going to go full coilovers in the front. I can start planning my mounts as well as clean up the axle. As you can see, we got rust in places. You take it out once in the snow in the Northeast and you've got rust everywhere. Perks of living in the Northeast, I guess. So over time, the bottom 3 bolts here have grown down a bit from drag of rust. So it's a fighter. I'm tired of messing around with it. So we're gonna weld the nut on and be done with it. Alright, now we can drain this thing. And you guys get to see it at the same time I do. There we go. So far so good. Let's get looking fluid. I got the fluid going. I hate the smell of gear oil. That's fairly clean. I bet I got some water in there, but it's not too bad. Here's kind of what I'm thinking. I have the mount fairly centered, so I can obviously get to the diff. I got a little bit of space here, barely any. In fact, actually, I do need to shift it over ever so slightly this way, but I might have to trim back a little bit here. But here's where the big trim is going to be. Obviously, my track bar is right in the way, so I'm thinking I might trim this kind of like this and up here, so that way it kind of contours the track bar mount. I might also need to trim back a section over here as well, or maybe even further. It depends on how far forward this sits. I trimmed off this piece here, the passenger side. I went a little overzealous, not realizing that this doesn't sit as high up on the axle as I thought it did. So I cut off a little bit too much because I wanted it to sit higher. In fact, this might still be okay, but what I'm going to do is cut this nice and straight here and put a piece of 1/4 inch all the way down and contour it to the track bar bracket. on the upright here, the support, I cut it down roughly, probably about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. It was up here, so I cut it down and then I notched it for the top of the truss. As you can see, I need to now take this little corner off to make this sit nice and flush, so that the whole mount rotates back just a hair. If you can see right here, there is a gap, and I want this to sit flush. So I got to take this little corner off here and do little minute adjustments, so that way this bracket sits flush against the truss, sits flush against here, and sits flush right here, because if you don't, this little thing sticks up and it's not seated perfectly. So let me go take this and grind it down, see if I can get this whole thing to sit flush. I think I got it. I might want to open this up just a hair more. I really want to get this to fit as flush as I can, so I might just have to open up this little area. Alright, looks like I'm going to have to open up the radius for the axle a little bit. And to be honest with you, it looks like I got to do that in a couple different places here. I got to open up this so it sits down a little bit further, and I can push the mount back just a hair. And that's ultimately what I want to do. Alright, a couple trips with the grinder. I got it much, much closer. And I could probably still do a little bit better job by opening this, taking this in just a little bit, or taking it out a little bit more. And I might just do that, so that way this thing's sitting nice and tight against, oh, there we go. There we go. Oh, it just wasn't fully seated all the way. All right, I think we're good. I might actually tack this in place. Let's see what this radius looks like. Actually, that looks okay too. Could be a little bit better. You know, I'm going to open up. Okay. So on this side, I'm just going to open this up just a hair, so this bracket swallows the axle a little bit more. Alright, I got 3 more supports to modify. Hopefully I didn't break it. Sorry. So I think I've roughly got the mount where I want it. I am going to mark with a marker some places to clean, probably all of them, to be honest with you. Then I'm going to take a magnet, 90-degree magnet on both sides, get this perfectly straight up and down, tack that in place, pull the whole mount off, and clean a couple spots, put the mount back on, and then tack it in place so it doesn't go anywhere, so I can start putting in my next set of supports. There's one right here and one that goes right here. Alright, after a bunch of grinding, was able to get this one in, so now I'm just going to go ahead and tack that in place on just the mount. So I thought I had this all, I thought I had this on camera. I'm not sure when my camera died, but I got this one all ground down, welded in, or not welded in, but tacked in. It's nice and tight against the truss. And then I got this piece over here that I got to cut down and get that to fit, and that's what I'm going to do right now. So before I pull this off last time to cut off these mounts here, I'm going to go ahead and mark where this is going. So normally, if I were using a Barnes truss, this would go underneath this lip here, but because of the height and the way I have it set, this is how it's going to be. So something I've been kind of concerned about is how I'm going to go ahead and mount this to the mount. And it looks like I was originally thinking that I probably wasn't going to be able to use the PCS weld-on mounts, but based on what I'm seeing, I probably have to, because I am not going to clear the ram mount without it. And to be honest with you, it solves one of my problems, because those weld right to the ram and then you bolt through right into the weld-on spot, and that'll lift the ram up and clear these brackets a little bit better. Also, I test fitted this, and we're in pretty good shape. I still have plenty of space underneath there, even if I lift it up. So that way I have no interference. So yeah, I think we're good to go. I believe I want to mount these with the nozzles closer to the axle to protect them. I think that's how it goes. For now, what I'll do is I'll clear this off. I'll put the crossbar here in, tack it in place just to make sure we're good. Before I go too crazy, there's a little bit more cutting that I need to do. Completely forgot about this part. This goes right here, but I have clearance issues. So I'm gonna do like a loose cut and get this so it fits decently snug on here. So what happens is this bent piece that's pre-drilled sticks and overlaps the gap that's cut out here. It sits just like this. Just like that. And then this part comes from underneath. And if I'm looking at it correctly, it will flush mount. But, like I said, I think this is made for a factory diff cover and not a aftermarket diff cover. So I gotta do some cutting. So let's come out a little bit further here. All right, I think I'm going to take out this part and this part, but I'm going to start with this one first, see how it fits, and then if I have to, I'll go to that second one. All right. I can't believe I got this first try. Although, to be honest, I think I might open it up just a little bit more. Maybe, yeah. I think I might cut a little bit of a notch right there in the very front, like right here. I might open that up just a hair. Yeah, let's do that. All right, so now I went ahead and clearanced my my diff cover skid, I guess we'll call it. And then they give you, Barnes gives you a bunch of these countersunk bolts. I'm gonna go ahead and just thread in a couple of these. Not all of them, probably one on each corner. It's probably like 4 or 5 of them. Then I'm going to set it in place, tack in the retainer, and we'll go from there. Alright, definitely don't do this. I put a little tack right here, and it's interfering with the diff cover skid. So I'm going to have to grind that tack down. I even tried to clearance this ever so slightly. Didn't work. So I'm just going to grind this tab down, or this tack down, and I'll have to hit it from the other side. Alright, I got everything clamped down, and I'm going to go ahead, I'll actually, on this, I'll throw a couple stitches in just for now, just to kind of hold it in place. and we'll be right back. New day, good morning. Last night off camera, just cleaned up all the grind dust. I also took off my hydro assist brackets, so there's still some dust everywhere. I also just kind of dry fitted the ram. That's why there's a little bit of fluid here, because the ram is used. What I did find out is that the surplus ram, as it sits, will sit too low, and the shaft will interfere with these mounts here. So I need to raise it up probably about 3/4 of an inch. PSC sells welded mounts that you weld in, and then that way you can actually through bolt and not through bolt, but basically thread into the mounts so they don't go all the way through, so you don't have interference down here. I gotta measure and see if those are gonna work for me. Otherwise, I gotta make my own. And a couple other things. I'm still undecided of what I want to do over here. If you can see this little slot here, that's where this goes, except for my track bar is in the way. I really don't want to mess with the track bar, so I might make my own custom bracket and have it come right here instead. I would use this, but this is too short. It doesn't come all the way to the edge, so I gotta fix that. And then I also cut this side up here. I'm just gonna go ahead, get a piece of 1/4 and plate this and kind of attach it to here, here, and then weld it into the axle and the track bar mount. Then I can break this off, clean up all my mounting spots, and start kind of final welding everything. The only thing I'm not going to weld in all the way, I actually got to cut this and this. This is going to come out because those weld-in mounts for PSC, if I decide to go with them, it's literally going to be mounted right here, and I'm not going to have enough room to weld it in. So I went on PSC's website, looked for those weld-in mounting brackets, and for PSC it's 4 inches center hole to center hole for my size ram, and it's the smallest one they offer. Mine is, let's see here, a little bit more, roughly 3.5, just about 3.5 inches. So it looks like I got to run to the steel store and pick up something. Oh well, probably be cheaper that way. I think they wanted $17 a piece for those little brackets. Probably get cheaper at the steel store. After several failed attempts, I finally settled in on my design. This is what I'm going with right here. It's going to sit right in front of the track bar mount and have a little bit more support. I also need to cut my end cap here. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how that came out, as long as I cut it right. Once I get everything cut out of 1/4 and tacked in place, I'm going to go ahead and pull the ram mount off the axle and burn everything in. So now I'm going to go ahead, grab my stock, my 1/4 inch stock, set up my table here and start plasma cutting. All right, took lunch, cleaned up the shop a little bit. I needed it really badly. I went and acetoned all the welding spots on the mount here. I gotta tack this in place and start burning this in. This is the suck down attachment. Then I'm going to skip this one because this is going to come back out one more time, and I'm going to burn everything in. But I'm only going to do about 1 to 1.5 inch and jump around a lot because I don't want to warp it too much, which is also why I'm not welding it on the axle. So I'm just going to time lapse this. So my metal came in for my welding pads. So what I'm going to do is take the ram, I'm going to put it down on here. I'm going to probably use a little in excess. I'm going to do more than the actual foot of the ram just so I have more welding surface. But I'm going to put the ram on, I'm going to mark, I'm going to center punch my holes, and then I'm going to drill and tap this, cut it in half. When it's all said and done, it's going to go in the ram mount somewhere, wherever it's going to end up, weld it in. I will have to remove this bracket here so I get all the way around, and when I'm all done I'm going to go ahead and put this bracket back in and final weld that. Got my pads all cut. I'm going to go ahead and put the ram on these. Center punch them with my little nice center punch kit. And then we can start lining up where we're going to weld these in. So now with the welding pads drilled and tapped, we are ready to go ahead and finalize the mounting of the ram so we can move on to the rig side of the whole process. I've got the tires centered. I've got the ram centered. I checked it for clearance. I should be good all around. This looks like it will be tight, but this actually threads up and I should have enough clearance. One thing to keep in mind, so I ran into this. Not everyone's going to run into this. I am using a surplus ram. The PSC has clamps that go like from like here to here. They weld in, and they have Allen head bolts that go through. I'm actually going to go and get those bolts as well. But for mounting purposes, I'm using these cat bolts. As you can see, I kind of scuffed up my ram a little bit. It is what it is. This is not a show pig. This is a trail rig. So I'm just using this to tack it in. Once I move the ram to finish welding, these bolts probably will not be going back in. But just once again to cover, everything is centered, everything is where I want it to be, so we can go ahead, tack in the pads, remove the ram, remove this bracket, burn the pads all the way in, put the bracket in, and burn the bracket in all the way. So let's do it. So the tedious stuff is done. The ram mount is done, fully bolted down. The ram is bolted down with the hex cap, hex head cap screws. Unfortunately, these links are not going to work. These are the ones that came with the ram and the kit and everything in the orbital. The person I bought it from had, I think, like Dodge axles, so it was offset more, which is why this link is too short, and the other one is about 3 inches too long. The ram was moved over a little bit more, and I could have probably done something to compensate for that, but I like the ram being as centered as possible, so I think we're going to be in good shape there. So we're done outside of a little bit of cleanup and paint. So off camera I started painting, just because I didn't want to bore you guys with it. So I'm using some paint, got the ram mount all painted. It's really wet right now, so I gotta let it dry. All right, in conclusion, I could say that I'm having mixed emotions about this mount. And nothing against Barnes, but a couple things that I did on my end that might have made this, might have turned this into a problem. I have an Artec truss, Barnes mount. I believe I still need to fix my caster a little bit. If you can see, my axle is actually kind of rotated down. When I put the axle back in, I didn't adjust the caster, which I need to do, and shorten it, which will pull this up and give me a little bit more clearance. And it might just be a little bit, over analytical of the work I did. Now, I can truthfully say that this was my second choice. I originally wanted to go with the TMR mount, which sits a little further. It brings the ram out probably right about here, and it sits much higher. In fact, I believe the top of that ram mount is right in this area here, like almost level with the bridge, and it raises the ram and it brings the ram closer to the axle, and it cuts off about 2 to 3 inches of the ram mount, so there's less to hit. I might down the road end up just cutting this one off and go to the TMR. But I'm gonna, I went through the work, I installed it, and we'll give it a season or two just to see what happens. I mean, who's to say that I don't want to go to a 10-inch ram, get that, you know, that crazy turning radius. We'll see what happens. I'm kind of playing it by ear right now. But with that being said, stay tuned for the install of the full hydro system, the building of the mount, the plumbing, all the good stuff. I got that coming up in a video coming out soon, so stay tuned. With that being said, catch you on the next one.